Hello, my name is Austin Sims, and I'm an extremely cringy, obsessed nerd. And because I am an extremely cringy and obsessed nerd, I have studied science a lot due to the fact that knowledge of the universe is extremely fascinating and deeply thrilling to possess. As a result, I've come naturally to clash with people who hold competing ideas about the universe, as I develop into more of a somewhat public figure on the subjects of science, philosophy, politics, and things to the nature of what I hope are great endeavors I've conceived of. That first endeavor being my creationism super thesis, the project that, spawned all these videos. I'm basically turning my life itself into a 24-hour, 365 Kitzmiller versus Dover trial where I'm the judge and everyone I can get to join me in my metaphorical courtroom so far are the opposing legal counsels. And yeah, so far evolution has been absolutely trouncing in my metaphorical courtroom. Enough so that I'm continuing to brazenly offer to debate basically any and all creationists, on a few basic stipulations, like they be at least somewhat knowledgeable about the subject, which I'm placing the barrier on that extremely low because I understand it is a very convoluted subject and there's a lot to know about it. That they be at least, somewhat mature and polite and capable of carrying on an intellectual I'm not totally against being passionate, but like if you start screaming insults at me, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time with you. And I do want to be the first to speak in any debate we have on the subject, for sure, are my three main stipulations. But otherwise, completely open. I'll debate you any format. Find me on Facebook and just start shouting on my homepage. Everyone knows what I'm about, so bring it on. I'll meet you here on the YouTubes and have a debate about that. And it's part of the reason I'm making this video, basically, introducing myself and my background and my reasons for being at the table, and etc. Because I'm having a big debate that's coming up. So some people who've never heard of me are going to be, watching me talk publicly for a couple hours. I figure they should have a chance to get to know who I am. But the other endeavor, that's the more recent one. It ended up developing because of the first endeavor, so that was so awesome. But the more recent endeavor two, is going back to school to learn as much about philosophy and science as possible, and then use what I learned to try and solve as many of the biggest problems facing the planet. But returning to Endeavor 1 and why I'm therefore making this video. So I had a few debates against this creationist guy, and they went very well. And I recognize that the guy argues a lot like a more famous creationist guy who has a much larger audience. And I assume that's because the first creationist guy is a fan of the more famous creationist guy. The more famous creationist guy, his name is Kent Hovind. If you're watching these videos, you might have heard of him. If you're somebody who is watching them because you're somebody I met through this project. But I've already asked basically all of my friends, and almost nobody knows who that is. But he's a very famous creationist who had like 3 million followers the last time he had a YouTube account. I think I will look that up after this video and find out. But because I started this project, I decided heck with it. Let's see if I can go straight from small time to the big leagues. And I'm very pleased to say yes, that's exactly what's happened. I'm about to debate Kent Hovind on December 2nd on the channel that Kent does all of his debates on nowadays, a channel called Standing for Truth. That's run by Donnie Budinsky, who was very, gracious in setting up this debate between me and Kent. So I appreciate that from Donnie, and I'm looking forward to it. And he has a big audience and a ton of videos. So I figured I should at least have like some kind of video telling anybody in the audience who is curious enough to visit my channel and see that it only has 3 videos, including this one, maybe 4 if I make another one before the debate, but that's unlikely. I work 2 jobs, have 2 kids, and I'm also trying to raise money to go back to school now at the same time. Well, I do this on the side as a an altruistic and humanitarian endeavor, and at least somewhat better use of time I would probably spend sedentarily video gaming or watching TV during, anyways. Yeah, I know. Hold your applause. I know. My Nobel Prize is in the mail. So, I guess I'll start by telling you about who I am and my story. So, my name's Austin Sims. I'm a computer guy for a living who lives in Michigan, lived in the US my whole life, moved up here from Texas when I was like 10 years old, and I've lived in Michigan ever since. Uh, I'm kind of academically gifted, so I went to some pretty good schools, learned from some pretty good professors who taught at really good schools like Duke University or Purdue or Harvard or Columbia, or I got some pretty good learning under my belt. Uh, but before that, I was brought up in a very hardcore Southern Baptist community in Texas. Like many people as a boy, I wanted to be a great athlete and a martial artist, but I also have always wanted to be a great scholar and a polymath, like Al Ghazali or Darwin himself, for instance. Another great scholar and martial artist that I admire is a fictional one, Gohan, of course, from Dragon Ball Z. I got my Vegeta up here that I'm repping. There's a Goku on the other side. You probably can't see him. I've got my very beautiful Princess Celestia, My Little Pony, that I did for my daughter for last Christmas because, I'm not only a great dad, I'm a somewhat okay artist. Uh, where was I even? Oh yeah, I wanted to be a scholar and a polymath, and so I played baseball and wrestled, and I got my black belt in judo and taekwondo. But I also read everything I could get my hands on, from human anatomy books to every fantasy book ever written, pretty much. Uh, Gosh, pretty much all of Stephen King's bibliography. Lots and lots of religious texts. Like I read the whole King James version of the Bible. I've skimmed other versions like the Standard English version, the Vedic Bible. I've read the Quran, parts of it, not the whole thing. I've read parts of the Bhagavad Gita, not the whole thing. But I have read lots of exegeses as well, like even obscure ones like the Aquila Tiratu Amanai, which is an exegesis of the Third Edu about St. Thomas. It's all about the quality of being a good person morally. It's great. I love all those exegeses. But like I said, I was brought up in a hardcore Southern Baptist community, and I was basically forced to be a young earth creationist for some of my youth, which is a much longer story that involves a lot of pain. To sum things up, my mom was dating a preacher's son whose father was a hardcore, extreme, right wing creationist evangelical, and who seemed to have a serious axe to grind with me for some reason. Well, I know what the reason was. It was social reasons. His son was a drunk who would beat my mom, basically. I think the fact that I knew that both he and his son were woman beaters made him really insecure and nervous. And as a result, it felt, to me at least, like he completely hated me, even though I was only like 6 or 7 years old at the time. But like, I think his survival instinct was, this little shit could tell everybody that sometimes I put my wife in her place and whatnot, or something like that. And so he made it a point to break me down. It was basically like growing up in North Korea for me, at least until my grandmother, who was a Unitarian pastor and an educator for like 30 years, found out what was going on and, reamed my mom out like I have never seen my grandmother do to anybody ever before or otherwise. Uh, but yeah, she saved me from that. And I ended up, learning a lot about science and about, you know, specifically biology and all the things. Zoology was the way my grandma introduced me to it. She would take me on trips to the zoo, and she'd answer every question I had earnestly and unflinchingly. Told me point blank, the Bible is poetry, science is inquiry, and they both have their value, and yada yada. I have accepted that and eventually became like, a theistic evolutionist. It wasn't that instant. It was like young Earth creationist to an intelligent design type to theistic evolutionist, and eventually I ended up just dropping the theistic part entirely and just being, an atheist who accepts evolution. I still don't think that God really has anything at all to do with evolution. Evolution is true whether there's a God or not, but it's the creationists who really insist that the two are related, kind of ironically. But yeah, because of that, I have genuinely tried to learn as much about both sides of the argument as possible, and I still hope to learn more through my discussions on it. I searched everything I could find about the subject from textbooks and online. I've brazenly approached every single expert about the subject I can and just started, hey, talk to me about this, teach me. And I've read or skimmed 50 or 60 or more links on evolution or subjects relevant to it per debate I've prepared for so far. And already I've learned an incredible amount about a variety of species, from birds, fish, penguins, platypi, kangaroos, bivalves, corals, echinoderms, dinosaurs, hominids, reptiles, to a ton about trees, volcanoes, meteorology, climatology, oceanology, as well as like other topics like politics and psychology. I finally just embraced that I'm going to be talking about it a lot, probably until it's time to punch the old final clock. So that's a big part of the reason I'm making this and all the other videos I'm making about creationism, science, philosophy, pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, flat earth, anti-vax, climate science, just a whole host of subjects I'll be talking about, debating about, learning about, just pure passion and curiosity. And the other part is that bigger endeavor, which, I've only just recently conformed into the easily expressed form I stated earlier. Go back to school, learn as much about science and philosophy as possible, then use what I learned to solve as many of the biggest problems facing the planet as I can. And creationism is firmly on the other side of some of these problems, which I see as, in their most succinct and truncated version possible, 1. Hate, violence, war, conquest, and inequality. Big major problem right off the rip. That is responsible for like the vast majority of the suffering on the planet. Just hate, violence, war, conquest, and inequality. Just those things are causing more people to die, to feel pain, to go without, to be hungry, just in general, than like anything else. I feel like I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who disagrees with me on that and thinks, hate, violence, war, conquest, and inequality aren't problems. 2. The fact that we harm, pollute, and sometimes even destroy our own ecosystems and environments in which we live or from which we attain vital resources. Yeah, also a huge problem: deforestation, garbage pileup, ocean acidity and toxicity, air toxicity, the ozone. All these things are suffering, and it's decreasing our quality of life. It's decreasing the quality of life for all biodiversity on the planet, except for, the rare organisms that thrive in an environment that's hostile to most other forms of life. We call those extremophiles, things that can like survive ocean vent heats, volcanic ocean vent heats, things that we, until relatively recently, didn't really think were possible for living organisms to survive within. 3, the fact that we compete instead of cooperating at every level, all the way up to the global level. I think, this kind of ties into the hate and otherness part of point 1. But if we were cooperating, if every country in the world was openly sharing resources, openly making sure every other citizen of every other country is as educated, as fulfilled, as happy, as full, and fed and clothed and homed as possible, the earth would be so radically so much better, I think. Like, homelessness alone, there are places that have fixed that, and it's a huge problem here in America, and there's no reason it should be at all. We're ridiculously wealthy, and if there were a greater level of cooperation, I don't think it would be the case. I think other countries would have intervened at this point on our behalf and made our government look so incompetent at solving the problem that it would have to actually step up and do something. I don't know. I'm crazy. I have all kinds of crazy ideas. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And then moving on to number 4 biggest problem as I see the biggest problems facing the planet, and that is that we vastly and perilously undervalue intelligence, education, critical thinking, politics. I have ideas about all of these problems. Many of them are popular ideas that other people more intelligent than myself have put forward. Do I think I can actually solve all of these problems? Maybe not, but I've only got this one life to do something about it. So I'm going to tap in all the deepest levels of cringe and delusion I'm capable of and try anyway. And this is where I'm starting, talking to people online about science. And things have been going great with that, actually. So I'm going to keep doing it for as long as I possibly can and as long as people want me around. Hoping Debating Kent will help some of these ideas get more attention, get more minds thinking about them. If that happens, everything I'm doing will be a huge win in my book. So yeah, that's kind of the video. I wanted to make a kind of short one for you, just kind of introducing myself and talking a little bit about why I bother, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Looking forward to the big Kent Hovind debate. Hope it goes well. I'll probably do another video talking about it after it happens. So, thanks for stopping by.